You're listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast brought to you by Nottinghamshire Live. Hello, welcome to Garibaldi Red, as we were supposed to be discussing what would have hopefully been a win for Nottingham Forest at Bournemouth, but unfortunately that game was off in rather shambolic circumstances. So we'll dissect all that and look ahead to the coming games. First of all, in the company of a debutant, a very welcome face in former Red striker David Johnson. Hello, John, are you well?
Morning, how are you?
Yes, good, thank you. Good, thanks for joining us. And our second guest today is a regular Reds fan, pundit Michael Temple. Temps, are you okay?
Good, thanks, Matt. Morning, Johnny.
Morning.
Right, Bournemouth away on Friday. Johnny, you went down. I don't know how far you got, if you made it all the way or not, like some fans did. I mean, it descended into a real farce in the end. What was your take on it all?
So I knew the night before that obviously we weren't going to go down, and we're going to wait for the morning. We decided to drive down. We got the feedback from Brennan that the game was either going to be Friday evening or Saturday if the weather was that bad. And then me, like most fans, were looking at all the Forest fans' pitches down in Bournemouth, and I just thought, right, let's go. So we headed off just after the EFL were meant to announce. Was it 1 o'clock? So we set off, and then we got the heads up, I think on about 3:30. So I just turned around. We'd just gone past, I think we had about 70 miles to go. I just turned around, and then it didn't get announced, obviously, until, was it gone 4? But we were already heading home then. So, I think they even had to wake the players up to tell them, and then get on the bus as quickly back to Nottingham.
Put your players' hat back on. Obviously, Brennan's in the squad. What are the players making of the situation?
They had a feeling that they didn't want to play the game. I think really disappointed. But as per usual, the EFL, there's no real rules to anything. And, to say structural damage. But then again, today I've just seen on Sky News, I think Fleetwood's game's off for structural damage. So it was just how late notice it was. I think that was the really disappointing thing. If it would have been 9 o'clock in the morning or at 12 o'clock, you would accept it. But such late notice was really, really poor. And I know that fans were taking pictures at the side of the stadium, but if it was the roof, there was never going to be anyone up there. But it just feels like that they did everything they could to get the game off. So, they could get players back for further down the line. And, not to play the game on Saturday when everyone was down there was, leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Temps, you've worked in communications all your career. From your professional point of view, it's just the way it was handled was just a bit of a disaster, wasn't it, all round?
I work in cricket, so my life looking at the sky. But I think, as Jono said, there was a good backup plan in place, which was play on the Saturday afternoon. Everybody knew there was weather around and storms around. We've seen Notts County have a series of games called off, and you can't do a lot if it's going to rain within 2-3 hours of kickoff, or if the wind's going to be where it is. But yeah, what's wrangled Forest fans is that Bournemouth have been relatively weak. 5 or 6 key players suspended, injured. And look, we all know, if you want to move heaven and earth and get that game on Saturday, you absolutely can. And they've, I think within the rules, found a way to inconvenience Forest. And that's what's left a sour taste, because we'd have been confident of being more than a match for them last weekend. So do
the rules need changing, Temps, for a bit of clarity?
You can't change the rules about the weather, but it's the contingency, isn't it? So if Bournemouth had been really strong and Forest had been missing 4 or 5 players, would they have moved heaven and earth to get the game on? Of course they would. And if the gloves on the other hand, and Forest are in that circumstance, within the rules, are there things you can do to engineer an advantage? But look, that game's got to be played at some stage. The cup run has meant that there'll be some fixture congestion. And you can see a period of time now where Forest might have to play 4 or 5 games in 10, 12 days. So, getting that game called off was an advantage for Bournemouth, a disadvantage for Forest. Can you do too much about the rules? Not sure. It's so subjective, isn't it? Particularly when it's called off for weather.
How do you think the players react to it in terms of they're pretty angry about it, I guess, Jono, in a sense. Does that make the bond in the squad even stronger? Because it feels now like the bond in the group is much better than it's been for quite a long time.
Yeah, I think when you prepare all week and the manager would have done everything, the finer details, you've eaten well, you go down there, you've flown, the club have done all the right things to get the players in the right frame of mind for the game. And then to be let down so badly like that is, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And obviously, can you remember when we played Birmingham away? I think half of their stadium was unfit, but that game went on. So for Bournemouth to have 4 sides of their stadium unfit is really, really poor. And I think it's things like that the players would be really disappointed, but it's gone now. They've got to focus on Tuesday, and he's just left now. And there's another game, and there's 15 after this. And, when we get round to playing them next time, I think it will be a proper grudge match. But they'll be looking forward to Tuesday night and, getting 3 points.
Yeah, if we look at the table now, Forest are 9th, 3 points off the pass on 47 points. I've got it in front of me. There's a real clutch of teams now who've played 31 games. Things have levelled up. How are you rating the playoff chase now, John? Are Forest in a good place, do you think, for the top 6?
I try not to look because from 3 o'clock, whenever kickoff is, to 4:45, everything's changes. And I was looking at the results at the weekend, and everyone's going, yeah, it's going for us. But we've got to play all these teams. And I feel that, from the Blackburn game, the pressure is on the teams above us to stay in the race. And if we can go there and play like we did against Blackburn and so many teams away from home with no pressure, I feel that we can actually do a really, really good job on them and, really push ourselves into the playoff contentions at the right time. There's no point getting in the playoffs now and then falling out with 3 or 4 games to go. I think that they could really push to get in there if they continually just keep doing what they're doing. They've got to play all the teams above them. And when they go there, the pressure's always going to be on the home side. And I think that'd be an advantage to us.
What about you, Temps, from a fan point of view? Because Jono's probably got the player's point of view of not getting too far ahead, but fans like us are plotting, playoff dates and who we could be playing and, is Middlesbrough a good matchup and all that stuff. How are you feeling?
I think it's an advantage to be in possession of one of those playoff spots and have everybody chasing you. But if you think it's condensed now, it's going to condense even more. And to Jono's point about timing the run, that's absolutely vital. You've only got to look at what's happened to West Brom, who's 11th now, having not won in the last 5, to see how disastrous a poor patch of form can be at this stage of the season. We're looking up to 3rd, 4th and 5th, where Blackburn, QPR, Huddersfield have all played more games than us now. And at some point this extra game will hopefully give us that boost. But we've just got to maintain what we're doing. It's not as if previous Forest teams in previous years and the previous managers would be thinking about what do we need to change, how do we look at the shape or personnel or the what's being delivered in that pre-match team talk. I don't feel like that now. I feel like we just need to keep doing what we're doing, keep picking the players that we're picking, and keep allowing Steve Cooper to say what he's saying behind the scenes, because it's working. And if we can have a nice little 5-6 game spell now, we can get well and truly entrenched in that top 6.
What do you like about Cooper, Jono? I mean, you put your views out on social media. I get the impression you like him more than Chris Hughton. What is it that draws you to Cooper?
His modern way of thinking. Football now is an entertaining business. These new coaches play on the front foot. Football's a lot quicker. You have to have pace. And if you marry that up with a good structure and a DNA, Dane's brought across his ideas, youth, and you mix that with a little bit of experience. He's changed everything at Nottingham Forest. The first 7 or 8 games seems like years ago now. And it's the same group of players. We've added 1 or 2, Steve Cook mainly. The rest of them were already here before. And it's like he's taken the handbrake off. Players are playing at the highest level they can. week in, week out. They're enjoying their football. We take the losses on the chin and move on quickly. And I think he's just telling the players to express themselves. And, I've said this before, he doesn't say much to Brennan because Brennan's not loud, or he's very quiet. And he just tells him to go and express themselves and don't be boring. They're the things he tells him. And I think that type of man management with certain players just works wonders. And I think that the team, the bonding, how close they are, these 90th minute equalisers or wins says everything about the team.
Anyone who listens to this podcast regularly knows that the 2002-2003 team was my favourite team, and Paul Hart's my favourite Forest manager that I've seen. So do you see any similarities between Cooper and Hart, Jono, in terms of working with young players, a style of play and a bond with the fans, or am I reaching a bit there?
I think that the core of the team, the youth, the local lads, is a big plus. And Joe being a leader, a captain, a vocal point in the dressing room, and I'm sure he gets across to everyone what it means to play for his local club. And when things are going well, I think the manager's brought into the history and of the football club, and he's embraced everyone in the city. And it's like a miracle what he's done, and it will only be worth it come the end of the season if we get in the playoffs. But from everyone around the city to Stoke on Saturday, sold out, every game sold out. It does bring a lot of things back. When I played under Paul, he played for the club and he brought all these great young players through. But I just think this team is at the right age, whereas we had a really, really young team. I think Andy Reid, Dawes, JJ, all of those players were still teenagers, where I think Brennan's probably the youngest with Jed at 20. And I think that it's not about the youth or experience, it's about how many games you've played. And I think we've played a lot of games between the whole starting 11 that really, really helps. So if we do go into these situations, they just seem a lot more comfortable playing away from home. Under Paul Hart, we were absolutely horrendous away from home. We battered everyone at home. So I think that this team is more well-rounded and a little bit more experienced.
What's the key to the bond between Brennan and Jed? They've obviously worked together really well on the pitch. Is there a secret success, a secret formula to it, or not?
I don't think so. I honestly believe that Jed plays to his strengths. Brennan plays around Jed because Jed will take on the fullback with the 30 seconds of receiving the ball in a game and try and run from one end to the other. And he's always on the front foot. Defensively, I think Jed's up there with the best in the division defensively. And that's the reason why he can get away with it. And Jed's got so much potential. He plays to his own strengths and it helps the team. And I think it helps Brennan. They don't link up massively really well. I think they've had one assist to each other. But I wouldn't want to be a left-sided player in the Championship playing against those two. I think that on their day, I think Jed's very, very quiet, very quiet, and Brennan's not similar, very, very similar, the pair of them. So they're not loud or leery, and the manager says there's a group of them, and he says they just sit there, they don't even talk to each other, but they're close.
Temps, you met Cooper last week through work, I think, and is he going to? What did you make of him? And I think you said he's going to come to Trent Bridge and talk with the cricket coaches and see if he can pick something up, which is quite interesting to hear.
Yeah, our director of cricket, Mick Newell, knew Steve Cooper from previous interaction when he was academy director at Liverpool, and Mick had gone up there just to see how they ran things and pick up some tips from a guy who was a very, very young academy director at that stage, and his playing career. Wasn't anything to write home about, was it? A lot of Welsh clubs, but one of his managers spotted his potential as a coach, or almost advised him, early 30s, late 20s, this isn't your game. You should be a coach. Go and do your thing. And from speaking to people that have worked with him, quite close to the Fizz, who was at that Under-17s World Cup, and just said he's just at ease with young people. and he gets normal people. And it's good to hear what Jono said there about him not overburdening a talented young player with reams and reams of information. He's just found a way to manage him, and that's great. So, yeah, from that meeting with Wednesday, just echoed what I'd already heard. Just very at ease with people, just a normal fella. And it sounds like a pretty benign thing to say, but how many football managers just trot out the cliches and look a bit uncomfortable around, journalists or fans or whatever else. And I think in a very, very short period of time, having previously had no link to the club, he's taken the time to meet, be it us at the local sports club or the journalists or the sponsors, the fans. He's just found the way to get all of those groups on side. And that's what's led to this groundswell of support, the feeling in the City ground, the numbers of the City ground, and got us into this position. So, yeah, we talk about Brennan and Jed being young with huge limitless potential. I think Steve Cooper's the same in a managerial sense, but he's achieving right now.
Yeah, I see you nodding along there, Jono. Is that the big thing about coaching today then, that managers have to be able to just get players and engage with them and always keep that hunger for learning there?
I think the manager spotted straight away when he came in. He wanted his personality and style printed on the team. He wanted another leader, and he went and got Steve Cook. And when he got linked, everyone went, 30-year-old, that's outside the DNA. And he's just walked and breezed into the team. And he wanted somebody on the field, instead of us being gun-ho and trying to win from the first minute to the last minute. And Millwall was a great example. Just stay in the game and you'll get your rewards because we have the quality. And I think that Steve Cooks came in effortlessly. Paul, Scott McKenna, he's never had a bad game. He's been absolutely seamless in the team. You've got Joe, and I think that base that he has to work with when Max comes back and obviously Jed is the key to the whole of the success. And obviously Bryce has been fantastic. And I just think that the manager gets that across and just gives them that belief to defensively. I think we've been brilliant at times. And then the younger players up front, the attacking style, just go and play. And I think these younger coaches are just fearless. He talks well. And what I think he's very good at is listening to other people and advice around them. And I think that's the reason why he's embraced the City, embraced ex-players, other coaches. And he wants to learn. And I think it's a massive strength for him.
How much does it help that he's taken Swansea into the playoffs the last 2 seasons, Jono? He's been around that environment. Is that a big strength for him now, even though they lost both campaigns?
It's awful losing in the playoffs, especially at the first hurdle. And I think it will put him into good stead, as in that he knows what it's about. And most of our team don't. I believe if we got into the playoffs, we are the last team anyone would want to play against. We are the team that everyone goes, let's avoid Forest. If we can get them to Wembley where it's neutral, we'll be okay. But that home and away, I think that we're the team to avoid. And I think that's Steve Cooper, the team, what he set up, the fans, a massive part of this. I've never known every away game. It's like gold dust trying to get a ticket. We could sell out a lot more. And I think he's brought that to the City and to the club. And it's just exciting times. And I know they've just announced the season tickets. And I thought, very clever by the club, because they'll get snapped up. Perfect timing.
I might be getting way ahead of myself here. If Forest do make the playoffs, do the Arsenal, Leicester and the win at home against Derby, does that help them, Jono? Winning on a big stage, does that make a difference or not?
I think it's just... I think sometimes you forget that terrestrial TV, the audience you get. So we've always been obsessed with Sky. And I think when the first game against Arsenal was on, I think it was the BBC or ITV, the impact around the footballing world and people who don't watch it was huge. And then when we beat Leicester and in between, obviously, our local derby, I think it's put Forest on a map where every newspaper's talking about our younger players, the club, the success, what Steve Cooper's doing. And I think it's put us on another platform. And I think that's got a lot to do with the FA Cup run. And it's been a great season, but there's 15 games to go. And I believe that we're in a really, really good place.
If we look at Preston tomorrow, then, Temps, they're always a tricky team, aren't they? They're very rarely down the bottom and not too often up the top either. But you never get an easy game there, do you?
As we've said in the past few weeks, we shouldn't be looking at the Oppo. We should have this inward focus and just have a look at what we're going to do rather than worry about what the Oppo are going to do. And I think that's a mindset, isn't it? Trying to win rather than trying to avoid defeat. And you mentioned that game there, but that little run, that Arsenal, Millwall derby, we weren't gung ho, and or at least the spine of the team weren't. We ground them down. We were really, really tight first half, and Arsenal was probably the best example of this. And then we nicked it on the break because we had gas when they were blowing. And I just think that there is a plan. You can get too caught up in the week in planning for who you're going to play against, what the Oppo are going to do, what shape they're going to play. Whereas when you've got your tails up and you're enthused and you're winning matches consistently, you don't have to spend as much time on that. Just give these boys the freedom to play. Get that blend right with the three in centre mid, which is his only selection dilemma, really, and then just empower them to go out and play.
Is Ryan Yates a selection dilemma? Because I saw you tweeted, Jono, he should play every game. There's no dilemma there for you then?
No, not for me. I think sometimes in teams there's unsung heroes. There's people who make the team tick without any recognition. I think Scott McKenna's number one, but for that energy and drive you need in this team, Ryan Yates is the first one on the team sheet. And I believe that Ryan Yates, one season, will score over 10 goals because the Ryan Yates that I know from a young lad, his energy, his work ethic, and when he gets in the box and he keeps missing, I'm thinking it will go in for him 1 year and he will stand out in front, and people are saying old-fashioned midfielder, tackle head, can do everything. Technically, he's getting better. And if you can add goals to him, but he gets in those areas, and getting in those areas is a difference between a Premier League player and finish them off to, as somebody who I think that is now getting the recognition he deserves. But if you can add goals to his game, he'll be a Premier League player all day long. You
mentioned work ethic there. That seems to be a common theme between Ryan, Joe, Brennan. I don't know too much about Alex Myson, but he sounds like a good kid. As a young player, Jono, would these players have made it without that work ethic?
It's the DNA in the academy. Hard work. They were in consistently morning and afternoon. They trained hard. They overtrained, I'd say. They ran. They were very old school, as in you need a base. Pre-season was super tough, and he put them into a place where they went to the first team. The first thing they don't really train very hard in the first team. And I think that is what Gary Brazile thought, that I'll get you there, but after that, it's down to your talent and to get through the door. And luckily, when Brennan went up with, I think, his first year with Sabriel, Martin O'Neill, he was put in the group, Ben Osborne, Joe Worrell, Yates, Matty Cash, all the runners, because that was the top group, but that was the norm. Brennan knew that if you couldn't be in the top group as academy, you were never going to make it as a professional footballer, and then it's down to your talent. So Gary Brazile, all the staff do a great job to say, these are the levels you need to go to. Once you get through that door, it's down to you. And I think that's an academy trait, and as you can see with all the players who've come through.
How important then is, I guess you throw Jack Letter in there as well, maybe, and Gareth Holmes, people like that, but how important are those guys, and particularly Gary Brazile, to the progress of Brennan?
It wasn't those two. It was Chris Cohen and Jimmy Gilligan. Brennan, Gareth Holmes was fantastic. Then Brennan had Chris Cohen and Jimmy Gilligan. And Jimmy was very old school. And I got on with Jimmy. He was one of my coaches. And he built the team around Brennan because he saw the qualities he had. and Chris was another one who liked Brennan's qualities. But the first thing they did is make sure that he trained as hard as he could and the best he could every single day. And Jimmy rang me one day and he says, I'm just ringing you because I'd like to give Brennan a bollocking. And I said, oh, what for? He says, we're playing a game and he had his socks down like Jack Grealish. And he says, and I wasn't having it. And I said, how did he play? He says, oh, he was brilliant. He says, but if I let him have his socks down, then everyone else can have his socks down. So I gave him a rollicking. I went, fair enough. And there were the standards he had to set himself. And it's things like that where from the outside, people might look at, oh, he's a bit cocky, he's trying to do this. But they were brilliant for really Brennan and let him express himself. And then you just needed the manager, a first-team manager that would give you the opportunity. And it's taken 2 years.
How good is it to hear that, Temps, from a fan point of view about the DNA of the club's a bit of a cliche in a sense. But I think Forest are one of the clubs that do have a DNA, and it feels like it's coming back now, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, it does. It does for me. I mean, there are great squads that are badly led in every single division, from the Premier League to the Dog and Duck, and there are also some, average squads that are really well led and play above themselves. And you're right, Matt. I think thinking back to that playoff run and the semis against Sheffield United back in 2003, that was a team that from the outside appeared really well led and together. And this one's the same. But yeah, little stories like that are great to hear, aren't they? Because it's not enough just to be talented. You have to work at it. You're not going to be a worse player by being fitter. So yeah, it's great to hear that, and it's great to hear that there's been this consistency now, hasn't there? The names that John has just reeled off there are either playing blinders for our football club now, or have delivered millions and millions of pounds in transfer fees to endorse the work that Gary Brazile has done over such a long period of time. So, yeah, the academy is a massive, massive strength. And if we can have that golden combination of a good squad, really well led, then that's when our potential is at its maximum. And yeah, I'm just praying it's this year that we do make that dent and have a crack at the playoffs, because make no mistake, Premier League clubs will come knocking again at the end of the season. And being in the Premier League is the only possible way that we could retain everybody, if not one or two. But that's for another day. Let's just get in this top six and leave nothing on the pitch. Like
Temps is saying there, Jono, let's get in the top six. There's a kind of a weight of expectation now that there hasn't been for a couple of years. Even under Sabri, I always kind of thought that might blow up because of the way he played. A lot of the weight of expectation now falls on Brennan, Jed, Joe, Keenan Davis, as well as throwing that bracket. I guess you can only speak mostly about Brennan, but how does he and the young lads, how do they cope with that pressure that's upon them now?
I think the manager takes all the pressure off them. I think the senior players take even more pressure off them and let them play. I think there's a lot of noise around the club about how well they're doing, and I think the manager keeps them on their toes. They don't have too much time to bask in the glory, because they've got another game Tuesday, they've got another game Saturday, and this run-in is going to be really, really tough. And I actually think that we'll probably see a few more players breaking into the 11 and making a few tweaks, because it will be really, really difficult for those to play 6 games a month, 7 at times, plus the FA Cup. But I believe that the manager can move a few players around and to keep that starting 11 as strong as they can. Keane's a key, massive key to this team, because his presence, his physicality, his pace, his power, he leads by example to get the team further up the field. Sam's come in and gave us something different, energy, legs. He's done very well. And we've got Phil. There's all sorts in this team. And I think the younger players can just go out and play. And when I mean younger players, it's just through experience. Brennan's not played 50 games yet for the club, Jed. But Max's experience, he's played a lot of football. Ryan Yates has played a lot of football. Joe Worrell's played a lot of football. So really, the team's got 150 games between them. And I think they can cope.
Keenan Davis kind of feels you'll tell me I'm wrong here. There's a bit of Marlon Harewood about him, is there, in terms of athleticism, and he can take players on, and he's quite a rounded striker, but maybe he's not as much of a finisher, like compared to yourself and Marlon. I always thought you were the finisher. Is there a comparison there, and how much would you have enjoyed playing alongside Keenan Davis?
I think it's tough for Keen because his record in front of goal has gone before him. And the way that we play in the modern football, you don't need a Lewis Graben consistently. If you focus just on one player that's going to score you 20 plus goals, and Forest have for the last couple of years, I think when we got close, Joe Lolly chipped in with a few. And I think now we do have, Brennan's in double figures, Philip Zinkel will get in double figures. I believe that Keane will get close. And if you look at that and think, well, that's 40 odd goals between them, and then everyone else chips in, we're more effective as a team. And I think that Keane's that player who, this is his first run properly in a couple of years, and he's thriving on it. And I think that the intensity is probably a little bit too much for him at the minute. Played Saturday, Tuesday, and he looked tired in the last game, but so did everyone else. I actually think he's a goal scorer. I just think that he's never had the run and fortunate luck to stay fit. And I think that's another thing that Steve Cooper, all his staff take unbelievable credit for, is to be able to keep the players on the pitch every single week. Because you look at other clubs struggling with injuries, whatever he's doing it well, because we've barely had anyone out for a long time with injuries.
What kind of career would you have had today if you were playing stage, Jono? And I think you always played up front in a two, and not many teams do that now. What kind of career do you think you would have had?
It's very difficult because the three at the back that I prefer this club playing in, I think we have the players. We can go to a four at the back. It's literally finding the right team. And like I said, I played with a two. If it was one up front, I'd have never made it. Never in a million years. Two up front, I think I could have probably worked with a three and done less running. But literally, I'd have found it tough because the demands now is to defend from the front and to lead the line and, overload in the final third. It'd have been very difficult because I just became effective inside the box. And now you don't see balls coming into the box, crosses coming into the box. It's a thing that I look at Brennan's stats, Jed's stats, and, wingers. And they cut inside and they look for cutbacks and they look for different avenues of just lumping it in because we don't have Peter Crouch or a big effective, well, we do now with Kean, but we play to our strengths. And I think playing in this team now, when there's not a lot of balls coming into the box from wide areas, it'd have been difficult. But credit to the players.
Yeah, every goal now seems to be a low cutback from the byline. Man City, Leicester, everyone seems to do that. Right, everyone who's watching this is going to be screaming at me saying, ask him about Brennan's future, ask him about his new contract. Is there anything you can say about that, John, or is it just a case of enjoy this season, see where it takes us?
No. The conversation started last year when he was at Lincoln, and Yanis, who's in charge, had rang me and asked if we'd like to sit down and talk about a new contract. Yes, no problem. But my worries was the manager. And he went, no problem. I completely understand that. I said, so let's get the wheels in motion and then hopefully we'll wait until September, until the window's finished, till the manager's allowed to bring his own players in. If Brennan's part of his plans, we'll consider signing. If Brennan's not part of his plans, there's no point. So we got to the end of September. I spoke to Dane. The contract offer wasn't very good. Then our next contract talks were in December when they had a bid of 10 million plus. And I said that it wasn't the right time to be talking. Brennan's just focused on the first team. We knew what was going to happen in the window, and Brennan was always going to stay. That was the fact of the matter. I spoke to the owner last week, had a very good chat with him down in London. He was fantastic. He came across really well, told me how he sees the club and future. And we said, okay, great, we'll carry on talks. There's 15 games to go. Let's sit down and try and get something sorted between now and the end of the season. But it's so busy. We'll probably give you by email or something, but literally that's where we're at. Everyone thinks it's like the deadline day, that you go in, you have an hour to agree the contract. It's not. The club take the time. We're in no rush. Everything's going really well. And I think fans just expect every Monday that, why hasn't he signed? And, we've sat down twice in a year. So that really tells you the club have been brilliant and we'll get there in the end.
So might he be here next season if Forest aren't in the Premier League? Or is that too much? Is that something you can't consider at the moment?
You can't. If the club came to us and said, we're going to take this offer and it's not the right club for Brennan, he'd stay. The issue is that at this minute, we haven't agreed a contract and we're not close. We're just talking. Until that time happens, he'll be here until the club says so. He's really happy playing under this manager. The manager's been absolutely fantastic, and so are the players, by the way. And hopefully we'll see what happens in the summer. Brennan has ambitions of playing in the Premier League, but what Brennan's really good at, he wants to go there when he's ready. He doesn't want to go and be a squad player or somebody for the future for their team. He wants to go and hopefully make an impact. That might be this year or the year after. But until the season's finished, who knows? Because if we go to the Premier League, this is the place he wants to play in front of his home fans, his own city, and he's enjoying it every week at the minute.
An unscrupulous player with an unscrupulous agent goes to Brentford, triples, quadruples his cash or whatever because it's sat there in front of him. And for a young man to not take that opportunity and to have such a mature outlook as to where he's at and where he's going is great to see. Look, Brennan Johnson will play Premier League football. We can all see that. We'd love for it to be with Forest, but there's a right way to go. And I think Matty Cash probably left in the right way, in that he waited for a good offer from an aspirational team that had a role for him in their side there and then. We've seen others leave Forest for money, the wrong move at the wrong time. Ollie Burke's probably a good example, and he's ended up back where he started in a slightly different coloured shirt. And I just feel that with advice from somewhere that's been there and done it, who happens to be his old man and his agent as well, he couldn't be better placed with the advice that he's going to receive. But yeah, of course the offer's got to be right for him, because there's 10 clubs that would love to have him in their squad if the price is right.
The club than him. I think you can't control the uncontrollables. One day, I think you hit the nail on the head. When we sold Oliver Burke, everyone said we should have kept him for a year or so, because I think he only played 13 games. It was out of his control. The offer at the time was unbelievable, and his development hasn't gone to the path that he wanted to. And if you knew Oliver Burke, he was always going to struggle because he's learning and he doesn't take information on board very well. Then you had Ben Berreton, who's now only 22, by the way. We sold him at 18, 19. He's now been given that number 9, the vocal point in that Blackburn team. He looks a 20, 30 million pound player. And we sold him because of the same reason. We needed money at the time. Arvin Appiah, we had to sell at the time. And Forest hasn't changed. We would like to keep all these players and to hopefully take them into the Premier League and build a team round and etc., etc. But there's always been circumstances why we've had to sell them. And Matty Cash was excellent. Never thought he'd be a right back, but he's done brilliant. And then he's leapt on again. And, we got great money for him. Sometimes it's out of the control. And come the end of the year, it's Premier League or nothing. And I feel that is going to be the reason why, if my son gets sold or not.
You wouldn't deny him that opportunity to realise his ambition. And you've said before, John, but there was no risk of him being sold in January. There would have been under previous regimes if the football wasn't going well and he wasn't valued. But yeah, I've loved watching him this season. I think everything you described there about what it's taken to get to this point probably emphasises why Forest fans have taken to him so much. Positive attacking player, been through the system, clearly loves the club, and has turned down a Premier League opportunity to try and pursue on the Forest. And I think I really hope he's the difference maker between now and the end of the season.
Do we need to be patient with the young players still, Jono? I mean, there's going to be a period in every player's season where things don't happen. It hasn't come for Brennan yet, I don't think, but it might. Do we still need to have patience?
There's no patience in football. So managers get sacked after 6 games, 2 months, 3 months. Everyone wants everything now. And so, yes, there is pressure on young players and they have to hit the floor running. You looked at probably Yatesy, how he was perceived to the fans compared to Joe Carvalho, who had a good 6 months. And even when João left, he was still hailed as the Portuguese prince. And it didn't work out for him under certain managers. Where Yates is now 150 games in and just about getting the level of appreciation that he deserves, and probably his standards have got better, but sometimes fans just prefer different players, and everyone loves Jed and would love to sign him, and he's probably the fans' favourite, and we've got others, but they do feel the pressure, but the manager takes a lot of it. He's just telling them to go out and express themselves. And while they do that, what will be and what happens at the end of the year with certain players, I don't think anyone else can control.
Give us some closing words. Temps, how are you feeling for the next few weeks? Now we kind of know where we are.
I just look forward to watching every Forest game at the minute. I love the fact that we've got our way that we play. We don't stray from it materially. We know there's 8 or 9 players inked in every week, and people like Myton, Graben, Lolly perhaps to come back into that mix. Really, really exciting time to be a Forest fan. Loving watching it. And first things first, 3 points tomorrow night, please.
John, I will give you the last words this week since you're our debutant guest of honour. How are you feeling about the weeks ahead?
I'm just hoping the game's on tomorrow. I've just got a feeling it's going to be called off. I didn't realise I had so much snow, and obviously it's rain and the wind obviously up there, so I'm just praying they can get a game under their belt and not have too much time of not played. So as long as there's a game on tomorrow, I'll be happy.
Yes, that's a good note to end on. That's a good starting point to getting promoted, is actually playing the games. Right, Thanks very much to everyone who's listened along to this, and as ever, if you liked it, do like and subscribe on YouTube, iTunes, any platform that you listen to us on. John, it's been great having you on. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
Excellent. And Temps, very good of you to join us as ever before you rush off to catch a train.
Cheers, Matt. Good to see you, Jono.
And a belated happy birthday to Temps. And we'll leave it there.
Happy birthday.
Thanks very much, everyone. And we shall see you soon. Thank you for listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please let us know. We love hearing your feedback. We'll be back soon with another episode. Thanks for listening.